this digital technology, we're way past the time and the point where it was benefiting us. Now it's just taking over our brains. If you're 30 and up, then you were the last generation, the last people to experience anything analog. It's starting in the 1980s, slowly 1990s, and then officially ending all analog together in 2010, changed the way that our brains function. And I'm not saying that we got dumber, but I think that our mental capacity has shrunken. I don't think that we went from analog to digital for anything good. And in order to really understand where humanity is headed, I think we need to take a few steps back. And we're going to talk about the things that are so nostalgic, the things that we miss, but also how we used to do so many things with these fingers and these eyes and this brain that we just simply don't do anymore, and we haven't done for over 15 years. And we're going to discuss how that has affected us. This is the definition of analog and the definition of digital for dummies, okay? Because I'm not super knowledgeable on tech terms, but I did do enough research to understand it in this way, and hopefully this makes you understand it better. Analog just means that it's simulating or it's signaling the very closest to what real signals are in nature. Okay, so for example, a vinyl player, the way it sounds when you hear, you can literally hear the sound wavelengths as well as the music, but you can hear what the frequencies sound like. When it's digital, MP3, you don't hear that. And that's how sounds sound in nature, through vibration, through frequency. Real life isn't touchscreen. Real life is like when you press something or when you touch something, you feel that you pressed it, and you feel that you touched it. You know what I mean? Whenever we would look at clocks more than the digital time, we would actually see with our eyes what time looks like how time moves. And I think that's why we feel like time goes by so fast now, because we're no longer seeing the tick 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 or hearing it either. Like when we would look at clocks in our classrooms, we only had clocks when I was growing up, and you could feel the time passing. You can even hear it if it was quiet enough. And now we don't. It just passes us, and we're like, where did the time go? But it's because a clock, which is an analog device, if you will, does simulate nature. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if vehicles fall into the category of analog versus digital, but if you think about it, electric vehicles versus motor vehicles, electric vehicles, when you turn them on, it doesn't sound like a car. It sounds like you just pressed a button, which you did, because a lot of them are button, and you don't even feel you don't feel the engine. A lot of cars these days, you barely even feel the gears shift. You don't feel the engine turning on. You don't hear it. And we may not realize what we're missing out on. Okay, my electric vehicle is more silent when I turn it on, and what's the big deal? Everything becomes so seamless, so basically untouchable, right? You just tap. The feeling of an engine turning off or turning on was connected to some knowledge that you have about your car, in my opinion. It creates a disconnect in the brain, in my opinion, because it disconnects you from what real life feels like. Now, take that and apply it to a larger scale of whatever we're going to talk about. It can get scary because our mental capacities, whenever we don't have that sensation anymore, while we don't have that feeling anymore, can that be mirroring the way that we really can handle less these days? I feel like we get easily overwhelmed by sounds, by distractions, by things. We just get more overwhelmed. It's something I notice in Gen Z a lot. Granted, this life is not easy, okay? And that's a whole other conversation for another day. But I'm asking for people to really critically think here and just, can all of those little things, right, that disconnect that we have created between humanity, nature, can that be the reason for why our capacity as human is dwindling? It's dying. Our capacity for just enduring more. It's obvious that like going back to analog has become a trend, right? Like the latest trend of the analog bag, which is basically just stuffing a bag full of things that are just not technology, no screen time. You see a lot of people raising kids without the screens. Also, at the same time, a lot of people raising kids with the screens. But millennials were truly the last generation to experience all these little pieces of nostalgia that we really like kind of try to recreate today, but it just never hits the same. You have people wanting to recreate the 90s and the early 2000s all the time. But can we really be that again? Because I think that this generation, Generation Z and the next one, what they're missing is something that millennials were the last ones to have. So let's get into it. I think millennials are the last generation to use their full brain power. And I know that sounds awful, but hear me out. We used to have to remember a lot of things, way more than today. That already in itself is concerning. If you got to experience the Nokia or the flip phone, and then eventually the Razor, and then the Sidekick, the Motorola, different types of phones, because back then you can actually buy more phones anytime one would get lost or broken, because that would happen because they weren't like thousands of dollars. I got to like have different phones. The one that goes up, the one that slides up like that, which is the Sidekick, the one that flips, the one that didn't do anything, which is my very first phone. Just it was just like this. And then the Razor, when it's like, oh my gosh, the thinnest phone to ever exist. Those phones came with, the ability to communicate with one another. But there were still so many restrictions. And those restrictions, we might have seen them as like, so annoying in the moment, but we miss those today. For example, there were a lot of plans back in the day that you would get that were more affordable. And as parents, like my parents did it for me so that I wouldn't be on my phone so much, which is just put a limit to the text messages, right? There wasn't unlimited text. There wasn't unlimited calls, unlimited data and internet back then. So you literally only could use up, like, I think for me, it was 400 text messages a month, if I'm not mistaken. And it sounds like a lot, but it's not. It's not at all, because it's counting your incoming and outgoing messages, okay? And just that alone, think about how much our brains needed to just keep that in track, right? Like keep that in mind while we're communicating. How much we had to just be okay with not having anything unlimited, period. Not only did we have to choose wisely our messages and like what we're typing out, what we're talking about, but we had to like have this sense of responsibility to make sure that we didn't go past that, because our parents would know immediately. And once those messages were up, like there's nothing else to do on your phone. So then you're just not on your phone. But then think about how great that was for our mental health. Okay, because nowadays we complain about receiving so many messages. At one point, you wouldn't be able to receive any more messages. Like imagine having that today, like where your phone just didn't receive more messages. Sign me up today for that, please. Again, like I was mad because I had a little boyfriend that we couldn't keep texting, but right now I want that. Those phones, you had to literally press a certain amount of times, one button, to be able to get to a certain letter. I'm sure you remember this, y'all. That was a huge part of our life. And the fact that we would do that so fast, that's freaking like, that's a skill. That's a skill. The fact that we would do that so fast. And like I said, my fingers didn't hurt that much back then. Of course, I was younger than they do now, but I think it's because the phones are so big that it's the way that we hold these big phones in our hands. That's what also has caused like the pain that I feel. But I wouldn't feel it back then when my thumb was doing all that work. So I don't know, like I just both thumbs, like. Think about how much brain power that takes. All right, moving on. Having to remember phone numbers, because if our phones died, if our, I would remember, I think I still remember my first boyfriend's phone number. I know, that's crazy. I still remember my phone number. I still remember my ID number in school. I still remember so many numbers. Also remembering channel numbers. Like Disney Channel is 95 on DirecTV, but it's 125 for this other cable, Bright House or whatever. I don't know. Like having to remember that, we knew all that. We knew different channel numbers for different cables. Can someone tell me something that is very similar these days to that? No, we don't really have to remember much because our devices remember it for us. Knowing the manual settings of a camera, only really photographers, professional photographers probably know that these days. But even if you just had a film camera, even if you just had disposable camera, you still had to kind of know how light works. And that is something that's amazing. It's like you have to know how something works, how it functions, the gears of it all, like the very foundation of it to be able to use it. That is a element of the times back then, like 2010s and before. That is a huge element of those days that we really don't have now. Our attention span, our capacity, our patience has gone out the freaking window. I opened up my laptop, and if it takes a minute to turn on, I'm like, what is wrong with my computer? Girl, you literally were on AOL every day after school, and you had to wait for the freaking dial-up. Like it was like, in order to even just turn on my TV after school, I had two antennas right above the TV. And I remember I figured out a way, like I know a lot of people probably did this too, it was like using rubber bands or hair ties. I would use hair ties to just put on the antenna and like play with it to get it to a certain spot so that I can get that one freaking channel. That was the only one that I had available when I was younger. Things like that, babe. The delayed gratification. Huge. And I think it builds strong humans. This digital advancement, this digital technology, we're way past the time and the point where it was benefiting us. Now it's just taking over our brains. Let's be honest. We went from this analog era to digital era simply because data became a very important type of currency for corporations, for powerful people, for the government. Having data on us is a huge thing. When we went digital fully, it was like a severance of sorts. We just gave up our independence, our privacy slowly. Things like this happen slowly. That's the only way, so that there's not a bunch of people going crazy. That's the only way that they can really fulfill their agendas, is just by making everything happen slowly. But we gave up our privacy, but we gave up our independence, we gave up our privacy, we gave up our brain power, and so many skills. So many things. Just like having MySpace, okay? The fact that we were coding, everyone in high school, even that kid that you were like, he's not that bright. Nah, but he's coding on MySpace. That football player is coding. That basketball player is coding. We were all coding when we had MySpace. And the satisfaction that you got whenever you figured out a new code, you would press save, enter, whatever. I don't remember exactly right now. And you would go on your page and it just worked. And it, like, you see the bling bling that you put on there. You're like, yes, I'm a coder. I got this. Even that, the fact that we were coding, no, now people are coding for us. Everything. Like, I know a lot of this sounds obvious, but I really just wanted to lay it all out, because we really need to like take a step back and realize that everything was planned. Everything was purposeful, and it was all to keep us controlled, to take away our privacy, to take away our freedoms, our independence, and our brain power. Oh, just the fact that we had to take care of CDs back then and VHS tapes, right? Like, we don't have to take care of anything now because everything's streaming. We feel like we need to consume so much because there's so many options. Downloading a song from LimeWire or FrostWire, not only did you have to be very, very careful because those apps caused viruses on your computer, so you couldn't even do it that much. So you really had to be intentional with the music that you listen to. But also, like, if you had to pay for music, you had to pay for music. So it's like you're just listening to the things you really want to listen to. You had a lot more responsibility of choice around choice. And these days we scroll through like 100 TV shows and 100 movies, and yet we're like, oh, there's nothing to watch. There's nothing good to watch. We have like tens and tens of playlists on our Spotify. It's like, oh, I don't feel like really listening to music right now. What? More choice feels like less freedom. And here are some things that these days we can easily see and be like, oh, this is where we are now. This sucks. This is scary. Has anyone noticed that when we go on our email now, it doesn't matter what email it is, at the very top, it goes, summarize this email. Uh, since when? Who is asking for the email to be summarized? I mean, like, if it's not spam, if it's not a promo type of email, I want to read the full thing because it is important. An email is not even that long. It's not a freaking essay. Like, why is there the option to summarize an email? What are we doing here? And who asked for that? Maybe nobody, but they just want us to not do the work. They want us to miss something. They want us to F up somehow. I don't know. And even if the summary of that email gave us the most important info and highlighted all the important parts of an email, all this leads to lack of literacy. We see it in our children. They can't even like read. And we're using AI to write how we were taught in college, but we forgot how to do it. This whole time we forgot how to do it. And now here's AI to teach us how to professionally write again. Remember, we would be taught how to write different essays, creative writing, expressive writing, free writing, professional writing, different types. And now it's like we can just have AI do that for us. But then what the heck did we go to college for? And like we have that ability, but we've forgotten it. So it's just so scary to think what our kids' future looks like. You know, I worry for our kids. I worry for their motor skills. That's why, you know, you hear like this huge talk about motor skills. Back then we didn't have to talk about that because kids would just be like, yo, help in the kitchen. Yo, like help with this toolbox. We would just have kids do things that already required them to use their fingers in a certain way. But these days now that's basically a part of a curriculum. Like it's called motor skills, sensory skills. Why do we have to call it that? Because that opportunity was taken from them to be able to even just use their fingers in that way, to use their senses in that way. It's only because now children actually have to be told, use your fingers in this way, because they're just tapping on a tablet. These are the good pressures. Like we got rid of the good pressures in our world, the good struggles, because we still have the bad. Another thing, now YouTube videos are being summarized. AI generated video summary. Reading a book and then looking at the summary, even then, the summary, it would leave you thinking about what the heck is actually going to happen. But these types of summaries are just like truly like summarizing people's work, people's conversations, people's points, people's messages. That creates this like impersonal energy, that revolution from analog to digital. How was it able to disconnect us from nature and humanity so much and connect us to something that is the complete opposite of that? We're so connected and so disconnected at the same time. Does automation really make life easier? We have this natural desire to press those buttons again, to hear that vinyl record play, to learn how a film camera works. We're going back to that for a reason. It's not just to look cool, it's because we miss how that felt, or it feels like we need to be doing more with our hands. We need to be feeling more. It's the reason why people are wanting to, you know, just out of nowhere go into the farm life. Like we, as much as we thought we wanted convenience, because life is hard. And that's another reason why they're making it so overwhelming. Life and society is so overstimulating so that we could just fall in the trap of these conveniences. But these conveniences are probably the reason for us not feeling like enough. Maybe these conveniences are the reason as to why we feel like our brains can't handle more than they used to. Like what type of life do these automations really, this evolution in technology, what type of lifestyle does it actually serve? Because we signed up for all of it and we said yes to all of it. Like instead of going through the aisles of Blockbuster and choosing that movie for the night, like we signed up for this overwhelm that we feel when we go on Netflix or HBO and Hulu of all these freaking shows that we don't even remember, like to the point where I feel like I've watched the same show tens and 20 times because there's so many that have just blend together because I've consumed so much. That's why I literally got rid of Netflix the other day. I'm not saying that now we're just making bad content all the time. I'm just saying that less is more and we have forgotten that. And they've told us that more is more, but it's not. They've somehow tricked us into receiving more and it looking like less. But when we had less physically and we saw less physically, we felt more in a positive way. So it's like, I feel like almost everything these days is set up to avoid confrontation. I had a family member the other day who was told, "Hey, no, we no longer want to interview you." The same day or the day before that he had the job interview, through a message, like an automated message. Why wouldn't the manager hit up the person that was coming in for an interview that day? Why wouldn't the manager either hit up them like personally through a message, through email, or through a call? That's like so rude. So there's so many like avenues now for us to easily avoid confrontation. And what does that cause? That creates more disrespect, that creates more of a lack of responsibility, right? To show up, lack of accountability. Like, you can name all the things. Confrontation makes you grow, confrontation makes you stronger. That's why a lot of kids these days, I think they're going for door dashing and Uber Eats. And look, I did it a few months ago, but it's so much easier in their minds to do that than to go and become a server or a bartender or work at a restaurant, because they don't have to deal with people. It's like this energy of, oh, I don't really have to deal with people, and that's what I want. Same thing with remote jobs. But the very thing that we think we want is most likely causing us to be miserable, because we need connection at the end of the day. We need to feel things the way they actually are. We need a little bit of that struggle, the good struggles. And they took those little good struggles away from us. So now we don't even know the difference. So why are we here? Is it because of efficiency? Is it because of cost? Is it because data became valuable to have on us? Is it because they now can monitor our lives more? If they own more of our security and our privacy, then they have access. They have surveillance access, don't they? And I want you to keep in mind that almost every crisis that's going to happen since that time, the 2010s, is going to be for the reason of accelerating this agenda. Like, the pandemic was definitely an opportunity for them to accelerate the digital era so much more. Large scale surveillance. I mentioned centralized banking systems. I mentioned programmable money and AI. I truly think that everything, our lives were changing, and we're just like, oh, this is cool. Oh my God, life is advancing. Like, technology, we're going into the future. Yay. But the whole time, the idea was for us to just eventually become dispensable. It's too much. We need to let them know that this generation doesn't care about those things anymore. Read more books. Don't get the Kindle, don't get the audiobook. As much as it feels like you're reading more books, are you really? How much is the brain remembering when you're not reading the words? And I know a Kindle doesn't have blue light, or it does. I don't know. Let me know down below. But the feel of a book, one day we will miss that. We will one day miss the feeling of a book, how it felt in our hands, how it smelled, the pages, turning the pages. We will miss how all of that felt if one day that they were just gone and we all just had Kindles and audiobooks from Amazon. Just like how we miss the vinyl record player, the film camera, the Nintendo Switch. Think about it. We don't know we're going to miss it in the moment, because there's always something better. There's always something more convenient. And then eventually you get tired of that. And you don't want that anymore, because it took you farther and farther from your humanity. A lot of the things that I talk about on my channel always go back to, there is an attack on our humanity at all times. And so if we view things from those angles, maybe we don't become so susceptible to them as easily. We don't fall for them easily. Can we go back to analog fully? No, we can't. But with this Gen Alpha, I know a lot of parents are worried about screen time. And I know it could be a very annoying conversation, but I don't blame this generation of parents for wanting to really ask, hey, is the TV okay? Is the YouTube, is the Rachel, is the tablet okay? Because hello, look around. When shit gets actually tough, we want our children to know that this is what's tough, not that, not what you think is tough. This is. We need to build resilient children. We need to be resilient ourselves, more resilient ourselves. And we've lost that along the way because we thought that it was just an upgrade of a phone. We thought it was just an upgrade of the TV, of our cars. And look where we are now. We underestimated all these advancements in technology, thinking that they were just convenient and that, wow, now it's easier. Now life's easier. Is life easier mentally? Because it might be easier in other ways, but everything is about perspective. Is it easier mentally? Thank you guys so much for listening to my rant. Leave me all your thoughts down below. What are you doing to kind of go back to analog in a way? Or what are you doing to just be less digital? Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment, share with a friend, and I will see you in my next video.